The reason I switched from the drums to the saxophone is I noticed that all the pretty girls had gone home by the time I'd finished packing my drums away. Hi there, welcome to today's vlog. Today we are dealing with another saxophone player I can't believe never made it onto the original Advent calendar. This is the great Ben Webster. Ben Webster was born in 1909 in Kansas City, Missouri, and started playing the violin as his first instrument. He then moved on to the piano, learned a lot of boogie-woogie stuff, and the story goes that he was, I think at the age of about 19, 20, playing in Amarillo in Texas for a silent movie theatre, and the saxophonist Bud Johnson was in the theatre. Don't know much more about the story other than Bud Johnson showed Ben Webster the saxophone and taught him the basics of how to get a sound out of it, probably taught him BAG, FEDC. He kind of would have loved to have been in the room, don't you, that time to be able to see someone as great and influential as Ben Webster learning those first few notes on the saxophone. We all did it. We all had to learn those first few notes on the instrument. Later on, not quite sure how later on, but he was invited by Willis Young, the father of Lester Young, to join the Young family band. Now, Lester was probably still playing drums, if playing in it at all at that time. Not quite sure on the chronology of the dates. Of course, the great story of Lester Young is that he was asked once, why did you switch from the drums to the saxophone? And he said, the reason I switched from the drums to the saxophone is I noticed that all the pretty girls had gone home by the time I'd finished packing my drums away. Now, in the 1930s, Ben Webster played with some of the great big bands of that era, the likes of Fletcher Henderson, Cab Calloway, Andy Kirk, and Benny Carter. Okay, and he joined the best band of that era, and probably the best band of any era, the Duke Ellington Orchestra, in 1940. After a great spell with Ellington, and I think you can hear the great influence of the likes of Johnny Hodges in Ben Webster's playing as he was playing in that section. He moved out on his own and dominated. One of the great players who was playing 52nd Street at the end of the 40s, early 50s, that great time in New York, up and down 52nd Street with all those jazz clubs, all those great names playing there. And Ben Webster was one of the big draws to 52nd Street. Webster's sound, that heavy vibrato, that kind of, he was better suited to playing slower medium tempos than the up-tempo kind of modern jazz stuff. He'd fallen out of fashion somewhat, and he moved from the United States over to Europe, where he stayed and toured and played and recorded right up until 1973, when he passed away in the Danish city of Copenhagen. Certainly a huge influence on the saxophone, a huge guy. I mean, there's a great story that, you know, he had his 1938 Selma balanced action called Old Betsy, and when he died, he said that no one was ever to play that saxophone ever again, and it now sits in a museum somewhere. I'm pretty certain it was on display. If you nip over to Cambridge Saxophone, there's a student of mine went to see the saxophone exhibit 3 years ago now, when it was the 200th anniversary of the birth of Adolf Sax. So there you go. But yeah, another great player. Check out the playlist. Make sure you're subscribing for the other videos. But, you know, you need to be able to go back, just listen to these players. And the big thing is, listen to the difference in the way Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins play, and then Lester Young play. There's a great story of Fletcher Henderson's wife, Count Basie's wife, taking Lester Young downstairs into the basement and playing him recordings of Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins and going, this is how the saxophone should sound, Lester, you're playing it wrong. And Lester Young continued with the way he was playing it, and, you know, Charlie Parker, Coltrane, basically everyone who comes after Lester Young is taken in by Lester Young. And Ben Webster, and you know, his sound sort of goes out of fashion, and it's the Lester Young style, that lighter, less vibrato tone, which becomes the mainstream on the saxophone. If you want to get to know more about these saxophone players, this book here by a guy called Dennis Taylor is absolutely fantastic. I'll link to it below. It was on the video I did last year about Christmas gifts for saxophone players. It's called Jazz Saxophone, an in-depth look at the styles of the tenor masters. Well worth getting if you're a tenor player.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light.